What do you worry about? What fills you with anxiety? Is it not having enough? Is it not being enough? Is it the fear that what you have will be taken away one day? Anxiety is a huge problem that a lot of people are dealing with more and more. So what does God have to say about anxiety? Well, the 5th chapter of the book of Daniel actually talks about this material concern and gives us a little bit of advice on how we ought to deal with it. And that's what we're talking about this week on the live show.
Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
Hello all, welcome once again to the Kindred UMC live show, coming to you not live but pre-recorded from my front room, aka Kindred Studio A. My name is Chris Hayden. I am the pastor of Kindred UMC.
I'm Anne, and I'm everything but clergy for Kindred UMC.
And I'm Danny, and I'm happy to be here.
You actually have a title. You are the elected treasurer, not you. You don't
me?
get a title. You.
Oh, yeah.
You are the treasurer.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, among other things. So I guess that's the effort. You're not everything else though, because we do have we've got an HR person. We've got
yeah.
I don't know why why am I picking this fight? Who cares? Nobody cares. There's nothing. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm a stickler for details, I guess. I'm not. I'm not even a stickler.
He just wants to change my name tag.
Yeah. Well, it's just everything else is too hard to. It's too long to spell, I guess. I don't know. I have no good reason why I'm even talking the way I'm talking. So we're continuing Daniel chapter 5. We're continuing our march through Daniel, or at least the first several chapters of it. And sudden twist. Do you remember the name of the king of Babylon?
Nebuchadnezzar?
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar. It's Morpheus's hovercraft in The Matrix. It's the Nebuchadnezzar. It's the king of Babylon from the Bible. He's dead now, so I hope you didn't like him too much because he's gone.
Oh, well.
So we're picking up at chapter 5, and now all of a sudden there's a new king. And that's because each of these chapters is really their own standalone story. And so this is, for an analogy, this is Batman. Remember The Dark Knight, where Batman fights the Joker and the Christopher Nolan Batmans. And this one, or the Christopher Nolan Batmen, because, all right, whatever. Grammar humor is not cool, and nobody likes it. I'm the only one. Me and my mom, who was an English teacher, we're the only people who like grammar humor. So, Dark Knight, Batman fights the Joker. And then there's The Dark Knight Rises, I think is the third one. The third Christopher Nolan Batman. And that one is all of a sudden, you're years later, Batman's retired, and everything's different. You're in a future world that's different than that's kind of what this is. They just go from Nebuchadnezzar is king, and he's delivering this monologue and talking about how great God is because he changed his life, and now his son is king. So Nebuchadnezzar died, apparently, off screen somewhere. We didn't get to see it. We didn't get to hear about it. And now there's a new king, and so that's what we're picking up. Chapter 5, Belshazzar is the king he's the son of Nebuchadnezzar. All right, chapter 5, verse 1. King Belshazzar made a great festival for 1,000 of his lords, and he was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. Under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar commanded that they bring in the vessels of gold and silver that his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple of Jerusalem. So once Babylon conquered Jerusalem, they stole plunder from the temple, and Belshazzar, who is now king, is like, hey, bring out all that plunder so we can party with it, for some reason. So they brought, verse 3, so they brought in the vessels of gold and silver that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. So this is straight up idolatry with the treasures from the temple of Yahweh. So if you know anything about the Old Testament, God doesn't like that. Like, it's a pretty bad thing. Now, instead of reading the entire text, I'm going to... So have you ever heard the phrase writing on the wall? Here's where it comes from. It's from Daniel chapter 5. So essentially what happens is writing on the wall appears. And Belshazzar is calling in all of these enchanters and magicians and somebody to interpret what is the meaning of this writing on the wall. Nobody can do it. And Daniel, just like Batman in The Dark Knight Rises, is kind of like retired from fighting crime. He's not a part of the court anymore. And so what eventually happens is one of the people in the court tells Belshazzar, hey, there's someone who actually is really good at this. And his name is Daniel, or Belteshazzar, which is his new name, his Babylonian name. And so the king sends for him and is like, please tell me, nobody can interpret this writing on the wall. Please tell me. And so this is picking up at verse 13. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king said to Daniel, so you are Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah. I have heard of you that a spirit of the gods is in you, and that enlightenment, understanding, and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men and the enchanters have brought in before me to read this writing and tell me its interpretation, but they were not able to give an interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now, if you're able to read the writing and tell me its interpretation, you shall be clothed in purple, which is a royal color, have a chain of gold around your neck. We all know what gold is. And ranked third in the kingdom. Probably behind some kind of advisor, not his wife. Because it's a patriarchal society. Sorry, ladies. Then Daniel answered in the presence of the king, let your gifts be for yourself or give your rewards to someone else. So he has no interest in these rewards that the king is offering. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and let him know the interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar kingship, greatness, glory, and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. He killed those he wanted to kill, kept alive those he wanted to keep alive, honored those he wanted to honor, and degraded those he wanted to degrade. He could do whatever he wanted. He was the most powerful person in the world. At least the known world at that time. And Daniel goes on to say, but when his heart was lifted up and his spirit was hardened so that he acted proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne and his glory was stripped from him. So this is referencing the thing we talked about last week. Go check out last week if you are curious. But he gets brought low and humbled. He was driven from human society, and his mind was made like that of an animal. His dwelling was in the was with the wild asses, and was fed grass like oxen, and his body was bathed with the dew of heaven, until he learned that the Most High God has sovereignty over the kingdom of mortals, and sets over it whomever he will. And you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. So, obviously Belshazzar's son, he would know this story, he would know what was going on, and yet he's acting haughty and proud. And you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. The vessels of his temple have been brought in before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have been drinking wine from them. You have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know, but the God in whose power is your very breath, and to whom belong all your ways, you have not honored. So from his presence, the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed. Are you ready? Are you waiting on bated breath to hear what the writing on the wall is? I am, right? I already read it. It's mean, tekel, and parson. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mean. Don't worry, we're going to talk about those words because they're strange words. I'm going to talk about there's a lost in translation thing going on here. Mean, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed in purple and chain of gold put around his neck, and proclamation was made concerning he should rank third in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So, weird story, right? There's writing on the wall, nobody can interpret it. Finally, Daniel comes in and interprets it, and then he uses weird words. And then the king gets killed. So let's just talk about the lost in translation stuff. Mean, tekel, and parson. They're kind of puns, they're kind of plays on actual Hebrew words that already exist. So here's the best example that I can come up with. Imagine if written on the wall was Count Wade David. Like, somebody's name. Count Wade David. Essentially what he's doing is coming in and saying, count, because your days will be counted. Mm-hmm. Wade, because your soul will be weighed on the balances of justice. David, because your kingdom will be divided. Like, it's a play on words, Gotcha. So it's words that kind of sound like Hebrew words that mean these things. Now, the thing that's missing in that analogy is these are all plays on words that are currency. So mean is actually like 50, like a $50. Tekel is similar to shekel, which is a penny essentially. And then parson or Perez is close to like 2 bits, like half a quarter, So there's also currency. Now, why is that important? Why is currency important? Well, do you remember what the gods that they were, what it says the gods that they were worshiping were? Yeah,
I remember wood and iron.
But... Yeah. You're right on track. Wood and iron. Do you remember what else was in that list? It was gold, silver. Like it's all resources is the point. So the gods that they're worshiping are resources. It's money. It's currency. And the thing that's on the wall is currency. And it's a condemnation against him. So this is a thing about materialism. Now, of course, obviously greed is bad, envy is bad, but I want to press a little deeper into materialism. Materialism is ultimately about where we place our trust. Materialism is about, do I trust in my own hand and my own ability to earn a living and make a way for myself? Or will I trust in something bigger than me, and will I let that bigger than me God direct my life, regardless of where it leads? So if you're like me, that produces a lot of anxiety. So I want to ask you, what worries you? What in this life and in this world, what things concern you? Where do you have anxiety? What do you worry about?
For me, it's definitely living my life to the fullest. Not so much on the materialistic things. It's more about what I do in this lifetime and, doing things that are very memorable. And I guess I get anxiety about that because I look at it as like, oh, I'm getting older and
I feel like you're wasting your time.
Right. And, I think sometimes I should have
seen
anxious.
Should have seen the Japan by now. Stuff like that.
Right. And just wanting to do so much and finding, do I have the time to do it? And not wanting to get older and regret not doing more. Mm-hmm. So I'm more anxious about doing things in my lifetime to look back on.
Yeah. How about you?
I worry about everything.
Good answer.
Yeah, no, really. Everything. If you've thought about it and you were like, it'll be okay. I've worried about it. I always worried. And then I had a child, and now I worry.
And now it's all better.
And no, it's like 10 times worse. It doesn't stop.
I get a cold sweat if I actually lean into the idea of being a parent. It'll make me panic.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, it's frightening. Now, part of that's because I haven't had the best examples. Yeah, Yeah, I'm sure my mom's watching this right now. Shout out to Mom. We're doing great now, but it was a rough childhood. And my dad was mostly absent. I don't have to worry about it because he mostly doesn't watch this stuff. So, but like dad wasn't there, mom wasn't there, and the idea of being a parent absolutely terrifies me. But also, I'm a little bit like you, not just being that thought, just existence in general kind of terrifies me.
Well, and what's interesting though, so like we were just talking about how it terrifies you to have to think about doing it. There comes a level when you're doing it though, where you just have to kind of be okay with it.
Oh yeah.
Because like it's gonna happen. The kid's gonna hurt himself. He's gonna bump his head. He's gonna and
doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Well, it can't be perfect. Not only
Right.
does it not have to be perfect, perfect is impossible.
Right. And you just have to be okay. So like you worry so much, and then I think like it finally full circles back, and you'll be like, well, you have to let it go. Like you have to realize that you're going to look back at it 30 years from now and be like, it's okay. It's okay that it worked out that way and it wasn't perfect because that's what it had to be.
Isn't that something about that says something very strong about, I think, grace, about.
Yeah.
So I wake up with anxiety. I when things are quiet in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. I wake up and I'm like, I have so much to do. A little bit like what you were talking about. Like I just have this like feeling of like I have so much to do and I'm not doing it. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to accomplish it. I feel like I have so many things that I am responsible for and want to be responsible for, and yet am like, I have no idea how to. Like this church is a really good example. I'm just trying to do the very small, simple task of completely reinventing something that's been thousands of years in the making and do it in a way that's effective for people who absolutely hate it. Mm-hmm. It's why did I choose this? I could have done 1,000 things with my life and I chose this. And there's just a little bit of a thing of like trying to like relax into, I'm not depending on me. I'm trying to lean into and depend on something that's bigger than me that I didn't necessarily choose this. I chose to cooperate with the thing that called me here. So here's the other side of that question. Have you ever had a moment of serenity and peace that really didn't make sense? The biblical language is peace that passes understanding. Have you ever had moments like that where you just kind of like, where that anxiety wasn't the monster in the room, but instead there was something else that was bigger and more serene?
Yeah, for me, a couple months ago, I went to South America and I backpacked through Peru. And we were in the Amazon for a few days. And as terrifying as the Amazon is, especially when the sun goes down, it's an extremely beautiful place. And we got up early in the morning.
Isn't it interesting that those things are often correlated?
Yes, it was. I respect nature 100%, but it's beautiful. And
it's also dangerous.
It is, but you respect it, and that's where that line is. And the Amazon is such a raw place, with not a lot of human intervention. And we were out in the river, and I think being in nature and hearing the birds and the monkeys in the morning and seeing the mist rise over the mountains and the trees, I felt like a lot of my anxieties didn't matter in that moment. That this Mother Nature around me, or they call it in Peru Pachamama, was much larger than me.
So much more fun to say.
Yeah, I like that word, Pachamama. Much more larger than a lot of the issues that I have, and just being in Mother Nature was very soothing and relaxing. Almost brings you to your roots. Of
Interesting.
The world.
Feeling the bigness of everything and your smallness. I think, and I'm one of them, I think a lot of people would, that's counterintuitive. I think a lot of people, the feeling of being small would actually, it seems like that should make me scared, how insignificant I am. But I've had similar experiences. Those moments are actually moments that the smallness of what I am rings true and brings peace, not anxiety.
Because it shows that a lot of the problems I have are
very interesting.
As big in the big scheme of things.
Yeah.
They really don't matter. And, it shows what else is out there and how beautiful it is.
The Seinfeld writing room had a picture. This is an apocryphal story, but I think it's true. I think I've heard Jerry Seinfeld talk about it. It had a picture of just like the universe, like a Space Hubble telescope picture. And that was one of the practices that they had as writers, was like, anytime you start to get like hung up on something, just look at that. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, that's right. Like, there's so much more to everything than whether or not I can land this joke. Right. Like this thing that's keeping me up at night. It's like,
It centers you.
there's everything. Yeah. But what about everything?
Right.
How about you? Have you ever had a serene moment past understanding?
I can't put my finger on something like quite like that, but like that peace under fire kind of thing. You know, like when the world around you kind of seems to be falling apart and you're just kind of like, meh. Like the house is on fire. It's like, all right, let me grab a hot dog and like hang out. Like, I think there is a point where you just realize that like something bigger than you is happening and you just kind of got to roll with it. And it's almost calming that like you don't have to have control of it. It's just gonna roll
happen.
with the punches. Right, right.
I talked literally moments ago for us, but last week for you, about effectively being fired. Not technically true, but like that's effectively what happened. And I remember in the midst of my anger, and I was pissed. I was like, how dare this stranger come in and wreck my life like this? But I do remember in the midst of that, an overwhelming sense of, I'm going to be fine. Like, I'm going to land on my feet. God has always taken care of me. I've been through, and that was a scenario where at that point in my life, I had been through many circumstances like that. So I had this pattern and rhythm of like, God always shows up. I know it. God always shows up. I have experienced it. And I remember talking, in fact, my childhood pastor heard about it and called me and was like, hey man, that's not, like, this sucks. That's not right. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And I appreciate you saying that. And I feel that way. But also, I really genuinely have a deep in my bones sense that like, this is going to work out for the better. God is going to use this. I'm going, like, you know, worst case scenario, I'll sell my house. Me and my dog will move into a 1-bedroom apartment. I can definitely afford that. I can work at Starbucks and do that. Like, and it was just this sense of like, I'm going to be fine. Everything, God has given me so much that this portion being taken away is okay. I can, and I was in fact, I was having lunch with my uncle and we were both talking about just anxiety and worry and what's, you know, gosh, is there enough? When is it going to be enough? When is enough? You know, that. And one of the things that has really, really helped me in those moments where I wake up at 4 a.m. panicky is like, okay, what are the things that I love? What do I just absolutely love about my life? It's like, well, I've got my wife, my dog. I love dancing. I love playing music. Video games, although I don't know that I would say I love video games, but they're fun. You know, I enjoy it. But and then other things I love like talking with people. I love discipling people. I love like helping people and listening to people and giving people skills to try and navigate the more complex emotional issues. And it's like all of these things are free or I own them already. None of these things take any money from me. Like my wife will be with me, my dog will be with me until he dies, which, you know, that'll be a sad day when it comes. But I can walk him we can live in a 1-bedroom apartment and I can walk him and he's going to be my dog still. I already have a guitar. I have several guitars actually. Nobody can really take those away from me. I can play guitar anytime I want. The rest of my work that I love is talking to people. Like nobody can take that away from me. You know, like, and when I really, really settle into, like, I certainly am grateful for where we live and the convenience and the comfort that we have. But the things that I truly love, no one can take away from me. And I think if anyone will look at the things that you truly love, you'll find that the same thing is true. And if you love something that can be taken away from you, that might be a warning sign for addiction. So focus on the things that you really, really love. And I think those are the things that will lead you into life and health and all the things that God wants for you. And I've already gone way over. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.